The moment she stood up from the table and quietly walked toward the restaurant exit, I knew something was wrong. Her shoulders trembled slightly, her head remained lowered, and although the restaurant was filled with the sounds of laughter, clinking glasses, and soft country music, the silence surrounding her seemed louder than everything else. Before we begin, if you believe kindness still exists in this world and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, comment below, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that touch the heart. My name is Nathan, and this happened 3 years ago in Charleston, South Carolina. At the time, I was 34 years old and living what most people would call a stable life. I owned a small construction company, had a decent apartment overlooking the river, and spent most evenings alone after work. My life wasn't exciting, but it was comfortable. Still, comfort can be lonely. After years of focusing on work, I finally decided to start dating again. A friend convinced me to try meeting someone through a local community group. That is how I met Hannah. We exchanged messages for several weeks before agreeing to have dinner together. From the very beginning, Hannah seemed different. She wasn't interested in showing off or pretending to be someone she wasn't. She talked about books, helping her elderly neighbors, and volunteering at a local shelter. Every conversation felt genuine. By the time we arranged our first dinner date, I was actually excited. That Friday evening, I arrived at a small restaurant downtown. The place wasn't extravagant, but it was warm and inviting. Soft lights glowed from hanging lanterns, and the scent of fresh bread drifted through the air. Hannah arrived 10 minutes later. She wore a simple blue dress and carried herself with quiet grace. She looked nervous, but she smiled warmly when she saw me. For the first hour, everything went perfectly. We laughed about childhood memories. We shared stories about our families. We talked about dreams we had never told anyone else. For the first time in years, I felt a genuine connection with someone. Then the check arrived. At first, I didn't notice anything unusual. But suddenly, Hannah's expression changed. The color drained from her face. Her eyes dropped toward the bill. Then she glanced inside her purse again. And again, panic slowly appeared across her face. She excused herself and stepped away from the table. A few moments later, I saw her near the entrance speaking quietly with one of the restaurant employees. The employee looked sympathetic. Hannah looked devastated. Then she turned and began walking toward the door. Confused, I stood up and followed her outside. Rain had started falling lightly. She stopped near the sidewalk and stared at the ground. Tears filled her eyes. With visible embarrassment, she finally admitted the truth. Early that week, her car had broken down. The repairs had cost almost everything she had saved. She had carefully calculated her remaining budget and believed she could afford her half of the dinner. But an unexpected charge from her bank account had processed that afternoon, leaving her balance nearly empty. She didn't have enough money. The realization had crushed her. She felt humiliated. She felt ashamed. And worst of all, she believed I would think less of her. As she stood there fighting tears, I saw something that reminded me of my own past. 10 years earlier, I had been broke. Not struggling, not barely getting by. Completely broke. I remembered choosing between groceries and gasoline. I remembered skipping meals. I remembered the embarrassment of declined cards and unpaid bills. Most importantly, I remembered the strangers who helped me when I needed it most. People who expected nothing in return. People whose kindness changed my life. Standing there in the rain, I realized Hannah wasn't upset because of money. She was hurting because she felt her dignity slipping away. And nobody deserves that. I gently told her to wait a moment. Then I walked back inside. The restaurant manager was standing near the front counter. I quietly explained the situation. The manager nodded immediately. Then, something unexpected happened. He told me Hannah wasn't the first person who had experienced something like this. In fact, many people struggled silently. Many carried burdens nobody could see. As I paid the bill, an idea came to me. I asked the manager if I could do something extra. He smiled and agreed. For the next 15 minutes, we worked together. Then, I walked back outside. Hannah was still standing beneath the awning, trying to compose herself. She looked exhausted, defeated. Like someone carrying far more than she wanted anyone to know. I handed her a small envelope. She looked confused. Inside was a gift card for the restaurant. Not enough for one meal, enough for 20 meals. Along with it was a handwritten note. The note simply said, "Years ago, someone helped me when I couldn't help myself. Today, I get the privilege of passing that kindness forward." For a moment, she just stared. Then tears began rolling down her cheeks. Not the tears of embarrassment she had been holding back. These were different. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of being seen. She covered her mouth and cried openly. People passed by on the sidewalk without knowing what was happening. But I will never forget that moment. Because something changed. Not only in her, in me. That night, we sat beneath the restaurant awning for nearly another hour talking while rain fell around us. For the first time, Hannah told me the whole story. After losing both of her parents within a few years of each other, she had spent most of her savings helping care for her younger brother. She worked long hours. She rarely bought anything for herself. And despite all her sacrifices, she constantly worried about falling behind. The world saw a smiling woman. But beneath that smile was someone carrying enormous weight. As the weeks passed, we continued seeing each other. Our relationship grew slowly. Neither of us rushed anything. What mattered wasn't romance. It was trust, understanding, friendship. Months later, Hannah confessed something that stunned me. That dinner had been one of the hardest days of her life. Not because of the money. Because she had nearly stopped believing good people existed. She had become accustomed to disappointment, to being judged, to feeling invisible. That evening restored something. She thought she had lost forever. Hope. But the story doesn't end there. A year later, Hannah and I returned to that same restaurant. Only this time, we weren't there for a first date. We were there to celebrate our engagement. The same manager recognized us immediately. He remembered everything, and when he congratulated us, he shared something neither of us expected. After hearing Hannah's story, he had quietly started a small community program through the restaurant. Customers could anonymously contribute to a fund that helped people facing temporary financial hardship enjoy a meal without embarrassment. Hundreds of families had already benefited. What started as one small act of kindness had spread further than either of us imagined. Sometimes people assume changing the world requires enormous wealth or power. But they're wrong. Sometimes changing the world begins with paying attention, with noticing someone's pain, with choosing compassion instead of judgment. Today, Hannah and I have been married for 2 years. Life isn't perfect. We still face challenges. We still worry about bills sometimes. We still encounter difficult seasons. But every time we pass that restaurant, we remember the rainy night that changed everything. Not because someone paid for a meal, because someone chose kindness when it would have been easier to walk away. Before this story ends, I have a special request. Please comment the word kindness below if you believe one small act of compassion can completely change someone's life. And if this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need a reminder that goodness still exists in the world. The truth is, most people you meet are fighting battles you cannot see. The cashier who seems distracted, the neighbor who rarely smiles, the stranger sitting alone at a restaurant. Everyone carries a story. Everyone. Zakantisoki carries burdens. And sometimes the greatest gift we can offer isn't money, advice, or solutions. Sometimes it is simply making another person feel valued when they need it most. Because years from now, people may forget what you bought, what you owned, or what you achieved. But they will never forget how you made them feel. And on a rainy night in Charleston, one simple act of kindness transformed 2 lives forever.